The Middle Ages defines a rather grim time period in the whole of European history. Occasionally referred to as the Dark Age, the Middle Ages witnessed its fair share of gloom through occurrences such as the Great Famine, the 100 Years' War, and the Black Death. But between all the agony, how did people in the Middle Ages live on a day-to-day basis? I am so glad you asked. The answer to that question is heavily dependent on the social class of the individual in question. Let's start at the bottom with the serfs. In the feudal system of the Middle Ages, serfs were peasants. Their days often began around 3 a.m. They'd rise to eat a good breakfast consisting of pottage or stew before heading out to the fields. They worked that field good. Serfs would often use tools that they constructed themselves using wood. They'd reap, sow, plow, and hedge all the day long. A serf's work for the day wasn't finished until dusk, which meant in the grueling summer months, the work days were even longer. After hours, the men and young'uns would eat first, while the women usually had to wait for their husbands and children to finish their meals before they could enjoy their own. Oh, you just hate to see it. Let's move on. The vassals, or knights, were one class above the serfs. Vassals would awake at dawn to attend mass and pray. Once they had had breakfast, vassals would attend weapons practice to sharpen their skills as swordsmen. They often dedicated time to discuss and study warfare strategies so as to strengthen their tactical capabilities as soldiers. Vassals would then re-energize with a meal and a mid-morning prayer. As the Middle Ages progressed, a more elegant, dignified culture emerged, which demanded that knights understand chivalry and courtly love. So after prayer, vassals might spend time at dance practice. Later in the afternoon, vassals would practice horsemanship, go hunting with their lords, or inspect the estate. They'd pray again before supper, and might even enjoy some entertainment, such as music, jugglers, acrobats, or court jesters. The day would conclude for vassals after this, but not before one final set of bedtime prayers. The day of a lord, or noble, started off quite similarly to that of a vassal, as it included mass, prayer, and breakfast. After that, lords would handle business matters regarding their lands and might settle disputes brought forward by tenants. Like the vassals, nobles would also engage in weapons practice before heading off to mid-morning prayer and a meal. They'd lead hunting or inspection expeditions with their knights in the afternoon and would enjoy supper with them in the castle hall or manor house. Their day would conclude with bedtime prayers. The top dog in the feudal system was the monarch, or king. The king would also pray and eat breakfast upon waking. He would then attend council meetings to discuss the affairs of his kingdom and review laws that might be passed into effect. The king might spend his afternoon hunting, but in times of war, he would lead his army onto the battlefield. He was expected to be educated in Latin and liberal arts, in addition to being able to hunt, horse ride, and sword fight. All in all, the king's top priority was to protect the kingdom, his people, and the Catholic Church from its enemies. However, people of all social classes found a way to have fun every now and then, regardless of where they were positioned within the feudal system. Popular board games included chess, shovelboard, and the philosopher's game. As for outdoor games, people in the Middle Ages enjoyed all kinds of activities, including golf, hammer throwing, and wrestling. Despite all the misery, devastation, and consistent casualties, life in the Middle Ages sure was a hoot.